Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rebecca Tabor-Conover. I'm head of public programs here at the Connecticut Democracy Center at Connecticut's Old State House, and I'm pleased to welcome you to this afternoon's conversation at noon. We're delighted to have you with us today, and as you know, in March, we celebrate the rich contributions that women have made to our world. Our topic for today that we're going to be exploring is women in leadership, and I'm very excited today to be able to welcome two guests who've been with us before at Connecticut's Old State House. Our two guests today are Patricia Russo and Theresa Younger. And before we get started, I would like to invite all of you who are watching today, if you have questions throughout the program, please just put them in the comments and we'll be happy to ask our speakers the questions as we go through the program. And to start off today's program, I'd like to introduce both of our wonderful guests. Patricia Russo is a nationally respected leader focused on achieving political parity in the United States and the world. For over 30 years, she has held numerous leadership positions in the public, private, and not-for-profit organizations centered on gender equality. Patricia has held leadership positions on federal, state, and local political campaigns, and presently she serves as executive director of the campaign school at Yale University, which is a nonpartisan, issue-neutral political campaign training program for those interested in running for office, as well as for those interested in campaign management, and embrace the school's mission of increasing the number of women in political levels of government at the local, state, and federal levels. Patty is a former chair and commissioner of the Connecticut Permanent Commission she held for 25 years. She also served as a leader for Love Makes a Family, a statewide nonprofit organization which worked for equal marriage rights for same-sex couples in Connecticut. It was disbanded in 2009 with an amazing party, which, wow, that must have been fun to be at, after achieving its goal. And Patty also serves as an honorary member of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women. She holds a Bachelor of Arts degree from the George Washington University and a certificate in healthcare and nonprofit management from the Yale School of Management. Welcome, Patty. We're glad to have you with us today.
Yeah.
And I'm also happy to introduce Theresa C. Younger. Theresa is an activist, advocate, renowned public speaker, organizational strategist, and a proven leader in the philanthropic and policy sectors. Having spent over 20 years on the front lines of some of the most critical battles for comprehensive equity and the elimination of institutionalized oppression, she now serves as president and CEO of the Ms. Foundation for Women. Prior to joining the foundation, Ms. Younger served as the executive director of the Connecticut General Assembly's Permanent Commission on the Status of Women and as executive director of the ACLU of Connecticut. She was the first African American and the first woman to hold that position. Ms. Younger is a thought leader at the critical intersection of gender and race. And within the philanthropic sector, she serves on initiatives to shape and change the narratives of women and girls, including grant makers for girls of color, funders for reproductive equity, and Black funders for social justice. Additionally, she serves on a number of boards, including the Ethel Walker School here in Connecticut, and she's appeared on MSNBC's Up, as well as NBC News, NPR Radio, Elle Magazine, and the list goes on and on. Theresa is a graduate of the University of North Dakota and was awarded an honorary doctorate of Letters in Humanities from the University of New Haven in 2018. She's also a proud Lifetime Girl Scout and Gold Award recipient. Welcome to you both. It's great to have you. And Theresa, welcome back to Connecticut, so to speak.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here with both you and my love in my heart, my Patty. It's great to be here.
Good to have you both. To start off with, I thought perhaps it would be interesting to have you both speak about the organizations that you work for and how they really work to try to get women in leadership roles. And maybe Patty, we'll start with you.
Sure. Great. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Happy Women's History Month. I celebrate everything. I think it's important that we celebrate everything, especially in COVID. I cannot believe it is now officially 1 year since I was on the Yale campus. It's just surreal. Yet I have never been busier. I know all of you out there can totally relate. And I always love to take full responsibility when I can bring back our beloved Theresa to Connecticut. You know, I don't mind sharing her with the world. I really don't. I love it when people come up to me and tell me how amazing she is. And, oh my God, you're so lucky, Connecticut. Yeah. But we loved her first. That's what I love to say. We loved her first. So I'm so happy I get to spend this time with one of my most fabulous BFFs. And Rebecca, you're so amazing to keep inviting us back. We have so much fun with you, and we cover so much. Thank you so much for your leadership here in our state. So our school, the Campaign School at Yale, was started in 1994 as a result of the Year of the Woman, which was in 1992, when many of you weren't even born yet. So in 1992, we had an inordinate number of women, both on the Democratic and Republican side, running for Congress that year. It was so exciting. I was working on so many political campaigns here in the state of Connecticut, and so many women who were running all over the country were coming to Connecticut to raise money. I remember Ann Richards was running for governor that year and came in twice from Texas and won. So the majority of the women who were running for Congress that year, Carol Moseley Braun was running for the United States Senate that year, first African-American woman in her own right, running from Illinois. She came in. The majority of those women who were running for Congress that year, they ran and they won. So those of us who have been active, working on campaigns for women, we're feeling pretty good. We thought, wow, we have finally smashed that glass ceiling. This kind of felt like, okay, we can check this off the list, because we were like, so many women now will be so inspired to run for office by virtue of seeing so many women who have won. But in 1993, it was as if no women had won. And so our founder, a woman by the name of Andre Alian Brooks, a Westport resident, put together a group of us to think about the issue. What is it about women not running? What is it about women not stepping up and raising their hand and taking the leap to run for office? So she put together a group of leaders throughout the state, including Rosa DeLauro, who's now our congresswoman from District 3, and then Nancy Johnson, who was from Congressional District 5 here in Connecticut, to kind of, put our heads together and think about what is it going to take to get more women to run. And Andre's vision, she's a little person with a big dream. Andre's vision was a campaign school whose mission is to increase the number of women in the political pipeline. And so after many, many months of working together to think about what that would look like for women, we knew we wanted it to be nonpartisan. We knew we wanted it to be issue neutral, so you don't have to be pro or con an issue to attend our school. We knew we wanted it to be not only for women interested in running for office, but also for women who are interested in campaign management. Because when you look at the number of women who are campaign managers nationally, you think of Donna Brazile and now Jen O'Malley Dillon on the Democratic side. And then you think of Kellyanne Conway on the Republican side, and then we're in free fall. And then we also wanted an international component to the school. And we also knew we wanted it at Yale. So fortunately, Yale Law School Dean Guido Calabresi, we met with the dean. He said, okay, I'll give you 1 year, and that was 25 years ago. So for the past 25 years, we've been holding our 5-day intensive at Yale Law School. We have found a happy home there. Our board president is Marta Moret, the First Lady of Yale. So we have strong, deep connections there. Unfortunately, again, due to the continuing concerns around the pandemic, we're holding our 5-day training this June, the week of June 21st to the 25th. live online. And our online application period is open right now until April 19th. And the application can be found right on the homepage of our website, tcsel.org. So that's a brief snapshot, Rebecca, of who we are.
Great. Thanks so much. And Theresa, can you talk a little bit about the Ms. Foundation for Women?
Sure. I always hate going after Patty, but I also don't want to go before Patty for anything. So she's fantastic. And Rebecca, thank you so much for this invitation to be part of this conversation today. And to everybody who's out there, I wish I was actually physically seeing you, but this will have to do. So as many of you know, I was with the commission for many, many years and the ACLU before that. So my love for being in Connecticut and being at the old State House is significant. And I just really do miss that aspect of knowing everybody in the room, because the sisterhood is strong in Connecticut, and I'm really excited about that. The Ms. Foundation for Women is this extraordinary public feminist activist foundation. It's the oldest in this country, and it was started by, of course, none other than Gloria Steinem and Marlo Thomas, you know, that girl, and Letty Pogerman, who is an author, and one of the first women on Wall Street in Pat Carbine. And those four women, they actually came together and started what they wanted to do was have a consciousness raising that would complement Ms. Magazine and yet still work on the other side of the issue. And so nearly 48 years ago now, they came together and they put together the Ms. Foundation for Women. And the concept there was around consciousness raising. Over the past 47, 48 years, we have grown and developed out the work of the foundation. We are the oldest public women's foundation in the United States, the first that actually centers women. And our mission is to build women's collective power to advance equity and justice for all. We've been very intentional about how we do that, and we do that by investing in and strengthening the capacity of women-led movements to advance meaningful social, cultural, and economic change in the lives of women. So, you know, the reason why it's important to understand that concept of the mission is that, well, we are not training women to run for political office. We are funding grassroots organizations and supporting those that are working in the movements that affect the lives of women. And we are looking at what that leadership looks like and recognizing that the leaders on the grassroots are those that should be running for local office and running for state office and running for federal office. They are closest to the issues that are impacting their communities, and they can tell that story from their lived expertise and experience in the work that we're doing. About 3 years ago, the Ms. Foundation decided to be really intentional about the work we were doing. And so we have decided that we would center our work around women and girls of color. It's not an exclusive approach, it is a centering approach. And so we know in the pool of inequality, which there are a whole bunch of folks in the pool of inequality, that if we drop our pebble over women and girls of color, then the ripple effects of what we're able to do will affect everybody in the pool. And so our attempt is to lift up the leadership of women and girls of color, to recognize their importance in the social justice movements that have been going on, and to move those conversations forward. So they're happening in the nonprofit sector, they're happening in the philanthropic sector, they're happening in the political sector, in the education sector, in the finance sector. I mean, last week we just had Goldman Sachs come out and announce that they were going to be moving $10 billion for Black women in this country. And we're in those conversations about what it looks like. At the Ms. Foundation, we believe in a safe and just world where power and possibility are not limited. And they are not limited by race, gender, class, sexual orientation, gender identity, disability, or age. We believe that equity and inclusion are the cornerstones of a true democracy in which the worth and dignity of every person are valued. The valuing of women, the valuing of women's lives, the valuing of our work. And just last night, we learned in Atlanta that there were potentially 6 to 8 Asian AAPI women who were murdered, right? These were women who were murdered. And the outrage on that needs to be something that we recognize on every level, that their lives have value. Their work has value, and hate has no place in our communities. And so, we're very intentional about how we get to our vision of creating a safe and just world and what that looks like. And I am honored and privileged to be leading the Ms. Foundation and to be able to amplify the work of our nearly 45 existing grantee partners across the country, over 1,600 grantee partners in the past 40 years, 45 years of helping to support grassroots movement building and lifting up leaders and their stories. That's a little bit of the work. And fortunately, because I came from the work in Connecticut, the movements in Connecticut, I've had the opportunity of also serving on the board of the campaign school, and now I'm part of their advisory team. So really looking to lift up across the country now what it looks like to lift up women's leadership.
Great, thank you so much. I'd like to just start off by asking you both, 2020 was a really historic year in that at long last, Americans elected their first ever female vice president. What do you think it means to people to have Vice President Harris elected and serving in her role?
Wow. Well, first off, let's just lift up the fact that, yes, she is female and she is a woman of color. And she comes from a biracial background, right? Indian and Black. And I think we just need to lift that up, because I think it's so important that we continue to see women in leadership roles that look like so many of us. So she's a woman and she has these identities, and she, holds identities as auntie and, a stepmom and all of those things. And I think it's, this is a pivotal point. 2020 was a really rough year on so many levels, and yet the country was able to recognize the leadership and understanding of her leadership in a role and in a space. And so we really get to see her, we get to understand where her voice is, we get to understand the complexities. I think we oftentimes have been presented with one-dimensional women in leadership. And I think Vice President Harris shows and reflects the complexity of our lives as women and women leaders, and the work that we're trying to do and how we get that done. And there will be a whole bunch of children in this country who only know that a woman can be elected as the vice president and potentially the president one day. And so, just that I think is really inspiring and exciting, and have positioned her to be the second highest leadership role in the world, really, right behind President Biden. And I'm excited about that. I think she is already changing the conversations that happen at the White House, and has been a forefront leader, not the first lady, the first female Black and Indian woman vice president in this country.
Did you want to comment as well?
Well, it's huge. It's huge. As we had an earlier conversation, and I said that so many women were so disappointed after Hillary lost the presidency that, we really needed this boost. We really did. We really needed somebody who looked like us and was our gender in this really critical leadership role, and somebody who knows who she is. I mean, that's what I love so many things about Vice President Harris, but this is a person who knows who she is. She reeks of authenticity. And, we talk a lot in politics about being your authentic self. You got to know who you are to run around in Converse and sneakers and be really great about it. And then the next day, wearing stilettos or flats, whatever inspires you. And so, talk about inspiring, we're seeing more and more women of color applying to our school, more women of color coming to our one-day intensive, getting ready for either a run for office or to run a campaign. And so it really does make the difference. It makes all the difference when you can see yourself in your leadership in your country.
Patty, you dovetailed very nicely into my next question, which is you must have psychically sensed it, which is I'd love to have you talk a little bit about your alumni and their successes. And, I've been enjoying looking at the posts on Facebook all month with you highlighting some of the exciting stories about some of what your alumni have gone on to do. And I'm also interested as well, because as you were talking about the fact that the campaign school is a nonpartisan school, that I'm really curious too, whether as graduates go out into the world, whether they're working cross-party because of those relationships they formed at the school.
Absolutely. They talk about it all the time. We give our students the opportunity to get to know each other at our 5-day intensive as people first, as human beings first, as women first, without a specific party affiliation, Rebecca. And oftentimes with everything so partisan right now, they don't really have the opportunity to do that. And what they find throughout the week at our school together is that they have more in common than not. They learn how to have conversations, meaningful conversations that they hold and bring along with them. They take with them once they leave our 5-day. So back in 2016, for instance, when so many of our grads were either traveling to Philly for the Democratic Convention or to Cleveland for the Republican Convention, our Facebook page was filled with our grads from both parties having dinner with their girlfriends from school. So here are all these pictures of, our Democrats in Philly having dinner with Republican girlfriends who live there and vice versa. You don't see a lot of that. We really do foster that at our school and hope that it continues. And they tell us that it does. They're incredibly supportive of one another, and I'm so proud of that. This Sunday, we're having our first fundraiser of the year, first fundraiser to that 2021, of course, via Zoom, a brunch celebrating Women's History Month and featuring two of our congressional rock stars in Congress, Lauren Underwood from Illinois and Nikema Williams of Georgia. Just phenomenal, incredible women who also happen to be women of color, who are going to talk about their experiences running for office, how it is not linear, their time at our school and how it had an impact not only on their run for office, but the way in which they choose to lead in Congress, and also a special video message from U.S. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, who is also a graduate of our school. So we're really excited, and we love showcasing our grads. And fortunately, there's so many of them. There's so many of them serving in public office right now, have run campaigns. Last month it was Black History Month, and we celebrated that in a big, fun way. We were able to showcase so many of our African-American grads who are currently serving in office all across the country. It was really, really exciting to be able to do that. And this month, every Wednesday, it's Women's History Month, Wonderful Wednesday at the campaign school at Yale. So if you go on our social media, it's a sea of all these amazing women who are grads of ours who are currently serving in office.
That's great. And with all of the work that you've done, I know that still the numbers, women have not achieved equity in terms of holding public office. What do you think is the most, and this question is for both of our panelists today, what do you think is the most significant barrier or obstacle to women running for office today?
There's so many of them. It's not just one. It's just kind of like this horrible combination of many. It's fundraising. I tell this story, and Theresa has heard this story a million times, but I talk about the traditional path of when a man decides to run for the United States Senate. It doesn't even occur to him that he's not going to be able to raise the $10 million, which is kind of the minimum these days you have to be able to raise to run for the United States Senate, How am I going to raise that money? Oh, I've got friends. They've got friends. I'm a good guy. Done. Do I know all the issues facing my state? Of course not. I'm going to hire a consultant. They're going to tell me what the top 3 issues are facing my state. And then I'm going to run around, stay on message, and share those top 3 issues. Do I know enough people who are going to vote for me? Sure, I do. I'm a great guy. I would be a wonderful representative. I belong in the United States Senate. All right. For a woman, it's $10 million. Where am I going to? I don't know that many people. It's daunting. So the fundraising itself is overwhelming. And then you start, thinking about all the other challenges, and it's a lot. Women still today, Rebecca, are asked the question, wow, don't you have children at home? Who's going to take care of your children if you're running for office? To this day, in all my years of doing this wonderful work, I have yet to hear a man ask that question. So it's the patriarchy, it's fundraising, it's we have this kind of top 10 do's and don'ts to get yourself ready for office. It's a whole litany of things that you need to consider, both professionally and personally, before you take the leap.
Yeah, that's so, thanks, Patty, because it's so many issues that we don't see, reasons why we don't see women running for broader roles and top level leadership. And part of it is that we oftentimes have placed a higher threshold on ourselves than we do for others. And so, we are seeking perfection by standards that have not been approved. And so folks are not running for political office because of that. And let's just be honest, we have a system in this country that is very patriarchal and has not actually built in any of the supports that we need to be having in order for women to juggle the idea of running for political office also. So we don't have, only recently have we been able to get childcare covered when you're running for political office. So it meant only certain people who would either bring their children with them or would have to answer the question about where their children are, as opposed to always assuming that these women that are running for political office can juggle those things and have been able to do it and will continue to do it. So with any luck, also seeing a woman as the vice president and seeing a woman as the Speaker of the House, we will begin to see more women in a multitude of more roles. And we are, I believe, currently seeing that happen on every level.
Great. And, one thing as we were getting ready for today's program, I was remembering that both of you served with the Connecticut General Assembly's Permanent Commission on the Status of Women. And that's now morphed into I believe it's called the Human Rights one now. It morphed with another one a couple of years ago when they were they put them together. And I
no longer permanent.
What's that? No longer. That's right.
No.
But I wondered if you could both talk about your time with the well, first of all, to explain to maybe some of our viewers who might not know what a permanent commission is, and talk a little bit about your time there and what you were most proud of with your work with the Commission on Women.
So I'll say where I came into the play, and since Patty was in the original brainstorming and thinking about the commission, the Permanent Commission on the Status of Women was one of the largest state-level public policy agencies in the country, specifically targeted at centering policy work around women and girls in the state of Connecticut. We modeled for other states what it meant to actually look at gender-based budgeting, what it looked to be intentional about the policy initiatives, what it looked like to help organize and coordinate those who had a particular interest around gender equity in the state of Connecticut on all levels. So from the courts to the legislature, to education, to the state house and the governor's office. And so the commission was very active in policy analysis. In the state of Connecticut, reality is the legislative system and process had not been set up to actually incorporate and include people in the process. So they had we would testify on legislation we felt was really critical. We would work with state legislators to make sure that they understood the impact of the policies that they were looking at and the interconnectedness of all of the policies that were on the table. And I just had such pride in being able to meet so many badass women across the state of Connecticut who were committed to changing their communities and understood the importance that policy has to play in their lives, and being able to work with so many amazing state legislators, both men and women, who were committed to having a do no harm effect, but actually making lives better for so many in the state of Connecticut. And sometimes that happened and sometimes it didn't. And I will tell you, we passed we worked on numerous pieces of legislation in the 7.5 years that I was there. And, the commission had been around for over 40 years with the intention of somebody who was waking up every day around gender equity and looking at the lives of women and girls in the state of Connecticut. The new commission structure does not do that. It's incorporated everything into one, and that is okay. That's the decision that the state made. But what it is missing is an ability to organize and coordinate with the intention of centering race and gender in the conversations that need to take place in the General Assembly. And legislation and things I'm most proud of. I'm most proud of the amazing staff I got to work with, as well as the line of commissioners that had served on the commission, Patty being one of them. But also I was really proud of so many pieces of legislation we were able to pass. I mean, Connecticut codified Roe v. Wade as one of the first states to do so long before I was even at the commission. But we did help increase minimum wage. We did work on what was happening in the prison and Department of Corrections systems. We also looked at components around vaccinations. We protected hospitals from merging so that we would actually have some choices in some of the more rural parts of Connecticut. And we were able to talk about some issues that were really challenging and difficult to talk about, but understanding the complexities of those issues. I loved my time with the commission. I am so sad the commission did not stay permanent. But I also recognize that we in Connecticut had been leaders in that space. And when other states were shutting down their commissions, at the time, the PCSW was in the forefront of leading national conversations. And I will tell you, it positioned me for my role at the Ms. Foundation for Women, because I understood the policies that were going on within each state. And because the commission had been a leader, I had been working with other states and other organizations around the country to model and to represent what we had been doing in Connecticut. So, the importance of having state level policy directive work that centers women is critical. And I think something the state should reconsider instituting moving forward. Patty, you know the history far better than I do of such an amazing organization.
It was such a special agency. There was nothing, no organization, no agency like it in the state. Again, to Theresa's point, the Connecticut Permanent Commission on the Status of Women was just such a role model for all other commissions for women in the country at the time. We were one of the first to pass the Family and Medical Leave Act.
That's right.
And it's thanks to the leadership of then U.S. Senator Chris Dodd, who took it on, along with then President of the Senate, the Connecticut Senate, John Larson, who's now congressman from the 1st Congressional District. These really good guys that saw the importance of leveling the playing field for women and families, and seeing the connection. When women thrive, families thrive. And so one of my the shining moments was when I was chair of the commission at the time, and having that be the first piece of legislation that then newly elected President Bill Clinton signed into law. It was the first piece of legislation he signed into law. So I really felt that, Connecticut was front and center as a result of that.
Well, it seems one of the things I think that you both are touching on in your comments is I think something that we work with the Connecticut Democracy Center, which is understanding the process of governing and how do people get involved in that process and making policy. And that's such a vital thing. And we're going to come back to that in a second. As I know that you both know each other very well. And I just wondered if you wanted to talk a little bit about, how you got involved in these issues of gender equality, and did you have special mentors along your journey?
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I think Patty and I both attest to the world of Girl Scouts. So as a starting point for an understanding of what leadership could look like, right? Every woman that was put in front of us was considered a leader, and their language that they used to talk to us was that of leadership. And so I think that was a starting point, and we both hold very near and dear to our hearts that mechanism. I think of mentors in my life, and amongst them are people like Patty Russo. It's people who are willing to step forward, speak a truth, involve women, right? Trust women, trust her girlfriends to have the answers and to be part of the solutions that we need to make. And I've been very fortunate in my lifetime and in my roles. I've had mentors who range the spectrum. So, Jeff Ackerman, who ran a day camp in New York, was a mentor of mine. He taught me that you hire with your heart, and that you lead from there also. And that was really instrumental to how I was working with young people when I first started. I think of women like Marcia Gillespie, who was actually the editor of Essence magazine and Ms. magazine at one point, and her leadership that positioned for me that you speak your truth and that you don't shy away from that. And so I think of my second grade teacher, Mrs. Blackmore, who said, we expect more from you. I expect more from you, and so will everybody else. And it allowed me to recognize that I was being watched, and that leadership, you need to be told, and the expectation for your leadership needs to be laid out there for us. And I could go on and on. There are names of mentors that people just don't know, right? It's my grandmother who worked in the front of the store. She was the first Black woman to work in the front of the store. And so other Black people who passed by the store could see her and would understand that she was holding a different kind of role. And there were people who didn't go through her line as she was a cashier in that store, right? And she, for me, is a mentor and a role model. It's my aunt, who was a special education teacher, Cynthia White, in New London, Connecticut. And, it was her organized. She was one of the first Black women to be a teacher in Waterford, Connecticut, and she organized teachers, right, and worked within the teachers union in order to help get teachers involved and engaged and get their voices heard. So I feel very blessed and privileged about the journey that I've had and the women that I've had who have supported me in this existing role and in my leadership development through time. And amongst them are people like a Patty Russo, who can hold a confidence and a trust and an appreciation for what we're all trying to do, and to recognize that we don't all have to do everything. We just need to do one thing. And if we do our thing and do it well, and trust that our sisters and others in this space, our siblings in this space, are getting their work done, then we can move towards greater equity and equality for all of us.
Thanks. Patty?
Well, I have to start with my parents. My parents were incredible role models for me. My dad would drive me to my consciousness raising groups and my now chapter meetings when I was in high school. How to drive. And my mom, well, my mom completely adopted Theresa the minute she met her. So Theresa will laugh when she hears this story, but my mom used to take us literally into the voting booth every election day, like all four of us. I'm one of four, all four of us, lobbed in behind that curtain to help her vote. She was vice president of the League of Women Voters in my hometown in New Jersey for, 35 years until the day she died. And so it's all that kind of subliminal messaging, mentoring that was happening in my home at the time. I also had the opportunity and the thrill of a lifetime to work as an intern for the late great Bella Abzug. Google her. That really was my turning point, I have to say, professionally, that I knew in my heart of hearts, and Theresa's point about leading with your heart and your brain will follow eventually. I learned all that from Bella. I had a phenomenal opportunity with her that was not, again, a linear approach. I tell the story as a young feminist undergrad at George Washington University. I was a poli-sci major, and one of the prerequisites for the degree at that time was to work for a member of Congress. And as a young feminist, the only one I wanted to work for was Bella. So there I am, up I go. I have my appointment in Bella's office, and I've got my new Macy's pantsuit on. I've got my little briefcase with paper resumes. That's how old I am. And I go in and I meet with a woman who's not much older than I am, who tells me that I look great, but there's no room. Everybody wants to work for Bella, which of course I do. And then I'm leaving, and she said, if anything comes up, we'll call you. I said, great. And then she put my resume. I'm leaving, and I see her tossing my resume in the waste paper basket. So you can imagine at a 9:05 what a ego boost that was for me, because I had, I don't know, 10 or 15 other interviews that day. So I had to run into the ladies' room, have a little talk with myself to get it together, because I wasn't feeling especially confident at that point. And so then there I went into Shirley Chisholm's office and Elizabeth Holtzman's office and Barbara Jordan's office and Barbara Mikulski's office. Nobody had room for me. So I'm feeling rather beleaguered at the end of the day. I'm back in Cannon House office building, which is where I started the day, in Bella's office. And I hit the ladies' room, just kind of trying to think before I go back to my dorm, where am I going to work? There's got to be a male member of Congress that I would like to work for. I just need to think about it. So I go into the ladies' room and I see a woman at the vanity crying. Theresa will tell you, my mother was an incredibly loving and kind and generous individual and talked to everybody. And so I did just feel myself gravitating toward this woman who was sobbing at the vanity. And I said, are you all right? I will be. I just quit my job. My boss is a nightmare. It's too hard. It's too stressful. I don't know why everyone wants to work for her. Well, of course, you know, her former boss was Bella Abzug. So I asked her, I said, who'd you work for? Because I work for Bella. Nightmare. She's so hard. It's so hard. I handed her a tissue. I wished her well, and I fled. I ran back to Bella's office. By then, it's 5:30 at night. For those of you who've been on Capitol Hill at 5:30, you know, the phones are ringing off the hook. The only people who are really still around the office are the ones that are key to the member of Congress's existence. Everyone else is pretty much left. So there I go back into Bella's office. I see my resume peeking out of the waste paper basket, but I said, no, I'm going to give her a new one. So I see the woman I started my day with, and I said, I just want to reiterate what an honor it would be to work for the Congresswoman before I leave for the day. And just as I was saying that, Bella came barreling out of her office, and she was bold and fierce and fabulous. And she had her briefcase under one arm and her handbag under another. And she saw the phones ringing off the hook. She saw me standing there, and she turned and she pointed it to me and she said, you sit. Answer those phones. And that was the beginning of this amazing political career of mine.
Thank you for sharing that story. It's a great story and perseverance too, that's for sure. Good timing.
Exactly. Perseverance, resilience, mentors, partners, great girlfriends. And I think the greatest joy, I have many joys doing this work, Rebecca, but when I look at Theresa, I think I know my greatest joy is when you have the opportunity to work with people that you love it elevates the work. It makes you better. And it's not, I always say that the work that we do, that Theresa and I do, it's not a job, it's a calling. It really, it's so beyond. And I'm just so grateful that I get to do it with phenomenal, brilliant women.
Yeah, I just want to lift up, Patty, what you said, because I think sometimes people think women are in competition with each other, and we're really not, right? This is really, if you want to have an impact, you have to bring folks along with you. And so, this is really a space that allows us to position and sit with gratitude and love in the work that we're trying to do to make the world a better place. And it means that sometimes you hold the door open, and sometimes you pull folks forward, and sometimes you lead from the front, and sometimes you lead from the back. And that, I think, is really what is so quintessential about women's leadership, and that we see at the campaign school, and we see it in the nonprofit sector, and we see it in so many spaces, which is there are a multitude of ways to have influence and power and leadership. And so whether you are the campaign manager or you're the actual candidate running for office, it is about how do you ensure that everybody is strong and has the power, and that you're operating from a point of trust and appreciation.
Well, it's great to hear you both talk about your experiences and mentors in your career. And I just wanted to ask, as you look at Connecticut, how does our state compare to other states when it comes to women holding elected office, both in the General Assembly, the executive branch, and on more local levels in town and city government?
We're doing okay. We could do better. Of course, I always say that until we hit 50%, I'm always going to be, working at it, right? And we are not there, as you know. We've actually had more women in Congress in the past than we have currently right now. But I have to shout out my 6 rock stars who are in the state legislature right now, all of whom ran during a pandemic. I'm always so proud of them. To run in a pandemic and to win as well as they did, it speaks to who they are as individuals, their passion, their commitment, their intelligence. So Jillian Gilchrist and Kristen McCarthy-Vahey and Caroline Simmons, excuse me, all ran and won their reelect this past cycle in 2020, and they were joined by 3 additional campaign school at Yale rock stars, Kate Farrar, Lenny Cavros DeGraw, and Jen Leeper. Yeah. And I am just so proud of, the way in which they are leading with such integrity and passion and commitment. As I like to say, that's the campaign school at Yale way, the way in which they lead in the world. We also are just so fortunate, Rebecca, to have Susan Beisowitz as our lieutenant governor. She is fearless, available. I mean, she was our morning keynote speaker this past Saturday as part of our one-day training, the campaign school at Yale, the basics. And she literally gave everyone in that room her phone number and her email. That's the kind of leader that she is. And other states are so jealous of that, because not every woman, not every activist I know has their lieutenant governor on speed dial the way we do. And Susan Fial has been an ambassador at our school for many, many years, and has a scholarship fund now named after her at our school. We also have Denise Merrill, Secretary of State, former president of the campaign school at Yale, a phenomenal leader. We need more leaders. A girlfriend of Theresa and mine, Pat Billy Miller, just got elected in a special election last week and is now a Connecticut senator. There aren't that many women in the Connecticut Senate. So the fact of the matter is, we just need more women everywhere. We need to keep inspiring them and training them until we reach parity. That's when I'll be happy.
So, as you know, I work with the Connecticut Democracy Center, and our focus is on state government, and both talking about it in today's world, but also historically with Connecticut's Old State House. And I'm just curious how you both feel how parents, teachers, and organizations like ours can cultivate an interest in holding elected office from a very young age.
Well, Patty mentioned one of the ways to do that, which is taking your child to vote with you, talking about the critical issues, and understanding what government is. Government is the people. It is each and every person. And so I think it's really important and critical for folks to be involved and to engage their young people. I think, what we've seen in the very immediate past has been a lack of understanding of what government is, what the Constitution is about, and the role that we all play, and the history that it's taken for us to get to this point in time. We need every voice needs to be valued. Every participant needs to come to the table. People come to the United States and live in the United States with dreams and hopes for a democracy that includes them all. And I think we really need to recognize that and get an understanding. You don't have to be able to argue every part of the Constitution. I mean, when I worked at the ACLU, it was like, you don't all have to know every part of the Constitution. But the Constitution is written as a conversation between the people and the government, and what that looks like, and how it will be managed, and what people what the government can and cannot do and influence. And so I think it's really important that we hold those conversations. We have to get more engaged in them. Every aspect of our lives is about what the government can be doing, what democracy should look like, how we value and how we lift up those voices. For me, I actually remember not just Girl Scouts, but I also went to Girl State. I was a Girl State governor in the state of North Dakota, which really taught me about the multiple levels of government, the importance of local government and state government and federal government, how monies and budgets get passed through, what do platforms look like? And I think those are important. You should not just identify with a political party. And in the United States, we only have two major political parties. We have multiple minor parties. But I think it's really important that we ask ourselves the question, how am I involved, and how am I taking my responsibility to the community as seriously as possible? And so, vote in every election you can, run for every office you are interested in, participate and help others run for office, and encourage people to vote, and encourage your model for your children the world you'd want to see. My parents were very active. Also, my father was in the military. And so, the idea of what civil service looks like, what communal service looks like, was really important to us.
And Patty, I have to say, I'm also old enough that I remember going in the voting booth with my mother, although I did not have three siblings. But here
it definitely made, and look, I'm still talking about it, right? I've never missed an election, and I lived out of the country for 3 years, right? I made sure that my vote was counted. But to Teresa's point about, the Girl Scouts, I mean, when you talk about, we have so many incredibly relatively new organizations to help young women become leaders and to think of themselves as a leader, to become civically engaged. It really started with me with Girl Scouts. I had a Girl Scout leader who, the language that you use is so important with young girls. She'd never say, who wants to help me? She'd say, who wants to be a leader with me? I'm still talking about that a long time later.
Yeah.
But we also have wonderful resources right here in our home state, Rebecca. We've got Live Girl, which is a wonderful organization based in New Canaan, Connecticut, run by the phenomenal Sherry West, that brings urban, suburban, and rural girls together to get to know each other. Just phenomenal training programs for them. I've spoken at their program. Me and my assertive BOA, we really had a good time there. And then Ms. President, which is a group that is for even younger girls. And after I speak to them, now these are 10 and 11-year-olds, they'll come up to me and they're like, what do I have to do to get into the campaign school at Yale? How do I get ready for that? At 10 years old. So amazing. And then I've done a lot of speaking over the years at parent-teacher organizations throughout the state to help parents figure out, how do I inspire my young girl and my young sons and daughters to be more civically engaged? What opportunities are available to me? And then not only in Connecticut, but nationally, there's Running Start, which is one of our partners at the campaign school at Yale, which is for high school and college age girls. They run a incredible training program every June as well in Washington, D.C., usually, although that too is live online. And it teaches them leadership skills. So it's really exciting to see that there's so many, resources and opportunities available today.
And I would just give a shout out to my colleagues at the Connecticut Democracy Center who run the Connecticut Kid Governor Program, which has now gone.
Yes.
And in the years of existence, we've had all-female kid governors here in Connecticut. I think we're on number 5 now. And so I think that's also getting 5th graders to think about what's a campaign? What's my platform? How do I run with that? I could talk to you both for hours, and unfortunately we're getting to the end of our time together, but I did want to share a question that we've had come in. Sequim Alfonso has asked, and maybe this is our concluding question of our time together, and we'll have to make plans to have you back because I know there are a lot of other things that we can discuss. It's been great to have you both. How can progressive and grassroots women work more collaboratively with labor women on the myriad of issues that are shared?
Yeah, I love these questions of how cans. I think we have to position it as let's do it. Right? So one of the things that Patty had mentioned early on when she was talking about the campaign school that I think is really important about collaborative efforts in different categories and areas is build relationships. Pick up the phone, call somebody. There's always history to every organization and to every person, but let's function now as if the world was burning, because it is. And so let's push past any conflicts, concerns we may have had. And let's also go in with the openness that we actually are here to learn from each other and come up with the best solution that is most informed, and make sure that we have each other's back. I mean, the labor movement in many ways has its own challenges, but it has been so critical to ensuring so many rights that we have as workers today. And if you are interested in supporting those organizations, become a member of them, show up, stand next to them when they are marching, cheer them on, and do all of those things. It's critical that we be sitting at tables together and figure out what the common vision is, and then figure out all the multiple ways we can get there. It does not have to be the same path, and be careful how we call ourselves progressive women and progressive spaces. Let's make sure they're really progressive, and what that looks like is a sharing of power, not a holding of power.
Thank you. Patty, do you have any final thoughts for us as unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. And
I know. Well, I always like to offer ourselves up. Those of you who know me know that I am literally a phone call, email away. Our website is tcsyale.org. My email address is prusso@tcsyale.org. If you want to have a conversation with me or other members of our board, I'm thinking about running for office. I think I want to take the lead. Can you help me just talk me through it? We're happy to do that. We will talk to any woman who's thinking about it to inspire them and give them the safety net that they need to run an effective, successful campaign.
And I would just encourage folks, if you have any interest in learning more about the Ms. Foundation, making contributions, or supporting any of our grassroots organizations, to go to forwomen.org or follow us on Twitter or all of the grams at Ms. Foundation, and that's MS Foundation. So, I invite people to check out what's happening and then get involved in the way that works best for you.
Well, Theresa and Patty, thank you so much for all the great work you've done to empower women running for office and assume leadership roles. As the mother of a 3-year-old girl, I really appreciate that. And I'm so happy that we had a chance to chat today. It's been wonderful. We've had wonderful comments from our audience. I'd invite all of our viewers to fill out the very brief survey about today's program, and I'd invite you to join us for our next program with Connecticut's Old State House. That is actually, we have one coming up tomorrow, and so thank you to our speakers for being with us. Tomorrow, do join us in the evening at 7 o'clock for Sempre Presente, which is shedding light on Latina history. I'd invite you to join us on Wednesday, March the 24th from 6 to 8 p.m. for an Encounters program, which is a joint program that we offer in conjunction with many partners, including UConn, the Wadsworth Athenaeum, and Hartford Public Library. We're going to be focused on Bushnell Park and the paradoxes of urban renewal. And then in April, join us on Wednesday, April the 7th at 7 o'clock for a program on the undocumented Americans, a conversation with Carla Cornejo Villavicino. So thank you so much all for being with us today. It's been great. We're definitely going to have to put this in the calendar to have you back, because it's been a great conversation with both of you. Thank you all for joining us. Have a great afternoon, and happy St. Patrick's Day.
Thank you.